it's a total addressable market of the human race. And it's really amazing and I think encouraging to know that there's so many opportunities out there for us. And like you said, Felipe, where there's a market, eventually there's going to be an innovator that comes along to fit that market need.
And I just hope there's more people like that, because 27 million, there's 8 billion tons every year. He's got to pick it up a bit. But
welcome to Your One Podcast, where future leaders take on the complexities of today.
I'm Gavin Farnan, and as always, we are joined by the insightful trio, Micah McNeil, Felipe Segura, and Zachary Crilley. And we just want to thank you for joining us on this wonderful Sunday afternoon, or whenever you're listening. And we appreciate all of you taking the time out of your day to join in on the conversations we're having. And today we are diving into something that's been slipping through our fingers, quite literally, and into our bodies and environment, microplastics, which seem to be everywhere now. These tiny particles might be small, but their impact is definitely large. And before you start imagining doomsday scenarios, let's clear the air a bit. We're not here to instill fear on these topics, but we're here to shine a light on what's happening, and more importantly, how people are stepping up to make a change. So let's look into this a little bit more. What exactly are they? Microplastics are defined as plastic particles less than 5 millimeters in diameter, and they are categorized into primary and secondary microplastics. So primary is mostly in commercial use, and then secondary is like the larger pieces of plastic, like water bottles, things like that. And these are being broken down by environmental factors, through washing our clothes, just microfibers getting into the water supply, micro beads in personal care products. They're really everywhere. Microplastics are everywhere. But some stats here. In 2019, global plastic production reached 368 million metric tons, and is estimated that 8 million metric tons of plastic waste enters the oceans every year. And about 60 to 90% of marine pollution is from plastic debris. And there's actually a collection of this debris in the North Pacific Ocean called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is estimated to be twice the size of Texas. And if that isn't crazy enough, it is estimated that we breathe in a credit card's worth of plastic every week. So again, just giving facts here, but this is pretty alarming. And I know that as issues get larger and larger, more people focus on a solution. But what do you guys think about these stats? I didn't know really any of these were going on previously.
Well, I mean, I was introduced to the topic when I don't know if it was on CNN or one of those news implications. The headline was basically, microplastics found in human testicles. So, obviously being of the, the XY sort, and, being a man, I was like, whoa, okay, let me click on this and read about this for a second. And then obviously, diving a little bit more in, and then, seeing, the stats that you just alluded to, it's obviously like pretty crazy that this is in our whole supply chain, from food and packaging within food, to the air we breathe in, to the cars that we drive and the tires. So it's basically and practically everything that we do today. So, thinking about it, you're like, maybe microplastics shouldn't be in, the chicken nuggets I'm eating, or the milk that I'm buying. But it is. And that's sort of the reality of the situation. So that's my quick hunch.
And before we all think about all the implications here, I did just want to look back at history and show that these problems, I mean, for one, we weren't aware of this going into the conversation today. And I feel like this massive problem is it's unknown to a lot of people. And that fact alone means that the mass public is not really aware what's going on, which means that solutions are yet to be made because of that. But I wanted to highlight this story. So I'm going to set the stage here for a similar event in our history that we can look at and hopefully have a little hope.
And just to frame, before we get into the solutions, just to frame how big of a problem this is, because it's really amazing to think how deeply these microplastics have penetrated our entire ecosystem, including, most concerningly, inside our bodies. That's what I'm most concerned about. And they're in the food we drink, or the food we eat rather, the water we drink, the air we breathe, it would be very difficult for one to avoid these microplastics and live a semblance of a normal life. And even though that there's a growing demand for these plastics, the problem is that you can't get rid, at least nobody's come up with a great way to get rid of plastics. So they keep on just shredding them down into finer and finer microplastics, and then nanoplastics, which is a level beyond microplastics, that have more and more of an ability to permeate into our bodies. So as Micah said, they found microplastics in our testicles, but that's not all, folks. The female should be worried too, because there's microplastics in our lungs, there's microplastics in our blood, and there's microplastics even, and this is the most sad to me, even in the placentas of newborn babies. So not even out of the womb, and these chemicals are in our system. There's 10,000 unique chemicals in plastics. Over 900 of them are known to be carcinogens. So what does this mean? This we don't know what the long-term implications of having plastics in our system are. The truth is that we don't know. This is a new problem, right? And I'm sure all the chemical groups out there are going to spend a lot of money to, like the tobacco industries did, to divert attention and to make it seem like this isn't as big of a problem it is. I don't think that we should be waiting for the regulators to step in here and to make a decision for us. We need to depend on innovators to find a solution faster than the regulators can keep up with, because this problem is snowballing, and there's going to be a whole lot of industry pressure from these chemical companies that are giants to keep this cash cow running.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, it's not that we don't think, or we think that microplastics is the big issue with society, but there is evidence now, or it appears that with lower fertility rates, lower male sperm count, chronically ill society in the Western world, especially in the United States, there has to be something in what we're doing. And we don't know, like Zach said, whether it's microplastics specifically that's causing this, but this is something that we can look at and say, maybe this is something to do with it, and looking for solutions to that, even though it is kind of a miracle of modernity and has helped human civilization carry on, just like fossil fuels have in the 1800s and whatnot, needs a solution.
And speaking of solutions, I have a similar story where it was just as daunting, but imagine you were in the 20th century. The world is on the brink of a massive food crisis. Populations are booming, cities are expanding, and the demand for food is skyrocketing. Traditional farming methods are struggling to keep up. Crops are failing. Famine is spreading, and the future looks very bleak. And it seems that humanity is facing an insurmountable challenge, which is feeding billions of hungry mouths. So similar to today, billions of people are being impacted by this microplastic issue. But in the midst of this disaster, there is a beacon of hope, and that is in Fritz Haber, a brilliant German chemist. Haber was determined to find a solution to the nitrogen deficiency in soil, which was severely limiting crop yields at the time. And natural fertilizers like manure and guano were insufficient to meet the growing agricultural demands. And Haber developed a groundbreaking method to synthesize ammonia from nitrogen and hydrogen gases. And this process allowed for the large-scale production of synthetic fertilizers. And Haber's innovation was really, it could be used everywhere. It provided abundant and affordable source of nitrogen for crops, transforming agriculture forever. And while crop yields soared, famine was averted, and the specter of food shortages began to fade, farmers worldwide adopted synthetic fertilizers, ushering in a new era of agriculture, prosperity, and stability. And the Haber-Bosch process is hailed as one of the most significant scientific breakthroughs of the 20th century, ended up feeding billions and supporting the explosive growth of human population. But let's not forget, every success story has the complications. And while Fritz Haber's invention saved countless lives, it also had unintended consequences, which showed in World War I, where these fertilizers and this invention later was repurposed for explosives in World War I. But that is really the nature of technological advancement, and it's a double-edged sword. So let's fast forward to today, and we find ourselves facing this new kind of crisis.
Wait, hold on. I think we have to really give Haber and Karl Bosch their credit here. You could make the argument that this is what they were able to create with their process on taking nitrogen from the air and turning that into fertilizer and nitrogen is one of the biggest inventions that's ever happened in the history of mankind. We were literally running out of food. Famines were rampant. And in the early 20th century, they were able to create a process where now we can eat every day. You can put food into your body because of their advancements that they made in technology. So before we just sort of gloss over that, that is huge. That is someone who should be remembered and talked about in schools, and he's not. But continue.
And where can people find an explanation of that? You had a podcast, right?
I'm not giving it out. I'm not getting paid for it, so I'm not giving out my advertisement. But I'll give it out anyways. Everyone should go just check out your own books on him. But I saw him for a podcast on founders that we've alluded to many times on the show. But I would go dive into that rabbit hole for a little bit. But continue.
Exactly. Well, I mean, this just goes to show that larger issues have been here and they've been overcome, and it's through people that come together worldwide. And we look at different instances like COVID, where the entire world was really focused on finding a solution, and it does seem that not that many people know about this issue. So what are what are people doing out there that are addressing this? And I know there's that big patch in the North Pacific, so we can start there.
Yeah, and because look, we understand that this is a big problem, and there's a lot of big problems facing our generation, right? Between fears of AI, climate change as a whole concept, and now this specific in microplastics. It's important to be reminded of stories like Haber, where solutions are possible. And throughout all of history, a big problem was population growth. And people thought, there's surely no way that we have enough land for these people. And then we got advancements in architecture, that we have enough food for these people. And then we got advancements like Haber's advancement in bringing more food and an abundance of food to people to allow for population growth. So these problems come with innovation and come with opportunity. And today we bring you the problem of microplastics in the body. While there's yet to be significant advancements of that, there is a great story of a Gen Z leader who's advancing the cleanup of microplastics in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. What a terrible name that is, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. What is that? That is all of the trash, a significant portion of the trash, the plastic, the grime that comes out of the Asian countries and from the West Coast of North America and South America. Because of the way that the water systems work, it conglomerates in one mass that is twice the size of Texas. 2 times the size of Texas, trash as far as the eye can see. How depressing is that? I mean, in our beautiful Pacific Ocean, to think that that's going on is just heartbreaking. And that's what this guy, Boyan Slat, a 30-year-old Dutch innovator and entrepreneur, felt. He was on a family trip in Greece when he was 16 years old and noticed that there was more plastic in the ocean than fish when he went scuba diving. So he came back and he did a school project on it, on an idea that he had on how he could help to clean it up. His teachers liked it. They said, hey, Boyan, there's a local TEDx speaking event. You should apply to speak on stage and give a little speech on your idea here on the ocean cleanup. He did that, did it in 2012, graduated from school, went on to university, didn't think much about it. And then a year and a half later, the TEDx blew up and went viral. And he started to receive a lot of inbound messages of people wanting to support his ocean cleanup project. And he started a crowdfunding effort that allowed him to drop out of university and have a 1-year runway to do a proof of concept. So this is a resourceful kid that comes up. I mean, it's not like he's the son of a leading ocean cleanup person or of a shipper or something and had a lot of resources behind him. He did a TEDx, it got notable, and he crowdfunded enough money to give himself 1 year of runway. It ended up taking him 5 years to get a proof of concept. It only came through in 2021. And since then, since he achieved that proof of concept in 2021, he's cleaned up 27 million pounds of trash. And he anticipates cleaning up 50% of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch in the next 5 years with under $300 million. So this is encouraging, and this is the stuff that we want to highlight. Here's a 30-year-old who's making a world of change and who didn't see this and say, oh, I feel like this is too big of a problem for me to focus on. This is the responsibility of the plastic companies, of the trash companies, of the oil producers. This isn't my fault. I'm going to wait for the regulators. I'm going to wait for somebody else to do it. No, he went out there and did it. And he has undoubtedly made an impact much larger than one person think that they could make. And he will continue to do so.
Yeah, bravo there. I mean, so many nuggets to touch there. And I think that's sort of the conversation from starting from Haber and Bosch, and then, introducing it to this entrepreneur that you mentioned, is that when humankind is tasked with very big problems, we have a very fond way of coming up with solutions. We know how to tackle it. We come up with innovation, and that's going to be really big as we focus on microplastics and all of the, so many subjects, so many things that just get so much, microphone time nowadays. And we've been good at that, and we're tasked with Gen Z on coming up with those solutions. We're now the leaders. So let's go out and do it. So, obviously bravo to him, and great introduction to him, Zach.
Yeah. Well, on top of that, I think you pointed to something really important, though, is it's kind of like the market, supply and demand. If there's a demand to solve an issue, someone's going to come up with a way to supply it, right? And so in this specific instance, this guy was scuba diving, and then he became aware of kind of the issues that, all right, we need to solve it, right? If there aren't people paying attention to the ocean, we're never going to think of solutions to solve it, or never going to get funding to do it, right? So I think in many ways that's also, when we talk about microplastics and whatnot, it's kind of educating or talking about and raising awareness to that issue of this is an issue. And then now it's time for people to go in there and try to find solutions to it.
Yeah, two main thoughts here. One is, I think it's incredibly important to hold these cases up of somebody who is not only an activist, but also an activist and an innovator and a doer, and somebody who he's cleaned up 27 million pounds of trash. That's incredible. And that earns my respect. And I think it's incredibly important to highlight those cases to show young people like ourselves, and even those younger than us, that this is possible. And the second thing here is, when we were researching for this episode, I wanted to find solutions for removing microplastics from the body. It's not here yet, at least in publicly findable startups. It's not out there. Imagine the marketplace for such a product. I want to remove the plastics from my body. I'm sure you guys want to remove the plastics from your body. I'm sure our parents want to remove the plastics from their body. Everybody, it's a market. It's a total addressable market of the human race. And it's really amazing, and I think encouraging to know that there's so many opportunities out there for us. And like you said, Felipe, where there's a market, eventually there's going to be an innovator that comes along to fit that market need.
And I just hope there's more people like that, because 27 million, there's 8 billion tons every year. He's got to pick it up a bit, but it's encouraging to see. But at the same time, like Felipe was saying, no solutions are thought about until it's in front of you. And what really brought our attention to this was a Harvard study on this topic. And Felipe, that was basically saying that microplastics are in our body, and that was like the first study that really highlighted that fact.
Sorry. No, yeah. I mean, it's a kind of a scary study, because people had always thought that when you took microplastics in, that they just kind of left your body just as quickly. But in this study specifically, and Gavin, this is the one with the testicles, correct?
Yeah, the testicles.
Yeah. So, and this is what's getting all the headlines. And what is really scary about it is basically they were able to inspect, I guess, older testicles. I don't know how they got access to it. This is not my expertise. But they were able to find that microplastics are present in there. And they were testing it on mice earlier and saw that the microplastics were present in mice. And so kind of seeing all these different facts and figures and seeing the presence of microplastics within the body still present after years of having it kind of freaked people out. Now, do we know specifically that if you have microplastics or a certain amount or a certain threshold in your body, it's going to lead to X, Y, and Z? No, not specifically, but I do think that it's very similar to the beginning of how people started to think of, I don't know, something like climate change, right? Like you see that the world's warming up, and then you look across the street, and then you see a massive coal power plant pumping tons of smoke and hot stuff into the atmosphere, and you're like, maybe, these two are correlated, and there's something, you should do something about it, right? So I think that this study is the first of a huge trend, and this isn't the first time that we've had to kind of clean up different issues. I think the generation before us, our parents' generation, had lead. The generation before was dealing with asbestos. And, this is going to be an ongoing issue. And I'm sure the generation after us, we're going to come up with some crazy innovation, which is going to lead to something terrible happening within our bodies or something. And we'll have to figure something out for that. But I do think that this is going to be an issue for our generation to tackle.
100%. And two things on that. One is we briefly mentioned regulation. And in my opinion, there is a place for regulation. And if we look at successful regulation for microplastics, in October of 2023, the European Union restricted the intentional addition of microplastics to products and has set a target to reduce microplastic pollution by 30% by 2030. So that's a success story. There's more than 80,000 registered chemicals that are used commercially in the US, and less than a dozen out of 80,000, less than 12 are regulated. That strikes me as ridiculous. But anyways, I'm so much on the side of we can't wait for regulation. It's going to be faster and more complete cleanup for an innovator, for there to be innovations in technology for this issue. And that brings me to my second point, which is if I were an executive at Dow Chemical, which is one of the largest plastic producers in the United States, I would be investing as heavily as I can in these innovative ways to clean up microplastics from the body, because as this becomes a more and more commonplace issue, this is something that the four of us barely knew a thing about in 1 or 2 weeks ago. And now it's something that I'm conscious of. And you know what? I'm probably going to change some of my consumer habits as a result. I'm going to look for alternatives to plastic because I don't want that in my body. So if I was an executive at Dow Chemical, I would be looking heavily into investing in innovative ideas like this Boy on Slack guy is doing for the ocean. How do we remove plastics from our bodies so that my products are safe and effective for people?
Yeah, good luck. I wait to get the feedback on you on that because it's actually impossible. it's in the tap water you drink. It's in the food that you buy at the grocery store. All of it. It doesn't matter if you go to Whole Foods or you go to whatever that expensive one in California is. It doesn't matter. This is everywhere, right? It's even in the tires. It's in the air that you breathe. So good luck on that one. Let me know how the feedback comes out on that. But, obviously, I would decide with that too. But I don't know, doing a little bit more research into it seems kind of impossible. I think the overarching point that you're making of, the world being more conscious about these things and obviously making an effort to change them is obviously on the forefront of what our generation and leaders and, are trying to solve now. So I think it's important.
We'll get there. It might seem impossible today, but AI, I'm sure, will be down the pipeline. Somebody will figure something out. But you make a good point, because I was reading this or watching this video where it's actually in our cells. Like the microplastics were small enough to get into our cells, like the nucleus of the cell. So it's just like, all right, if it's at that level, then we're going to have to put something into our bodies to purify our cells. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes, but we'll definitely stay close to the topic and see if there's any innovation in the space. But for that, we thank you all for listening. And we hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll talk to you next week.